AMIA has set up collaborative notes. You can do it there to share with anybody online who might like to access them. We're going to start off today with a roundtable discussion, and we've collected 5 folks from literally across the country. We have Kelly Hicks from National Metro Archives, Janelle Kirante, did I pronounce that? From the Kualoa Moving Image Archive of Hawaii, but probably butchered that. Ben Truey from Southern Oregon Historical Society, our local boy. Renee Ramos from the Wolfson Archives, and Candace Ming from the Southside Home Movie Project. So the plan here is each one will come up in turn, introduce themselves and their archive. And then we're just sitting in the front row. We're just going to turn the chairs around. And then we can have a Q&A discussion using their introductions as kind of a starting point. But kind of no limits. You know, we want to talk about building, maintaining, and sharing regional archives, and talk about the experiences that not only our panelists, but other people in the room have to kind of share resources, tools, and ideas about doing what we do and doing it well. So without further ado, we'll get started with Kelly Hicks.
Thanks. Do you want me to come up here, or should I?
You can do it however you prefer. On mic is best so that we can get you, we're being streamed, so.
Hi everybody, my name is Kelly Hicks and I'm an independent archivist. One of my primary projects right now is working on the Nashville Metro Archives collection, which we call the Audiovisual Conservation Center, and that is under the umbrella of the Nashville Public Library. So I'm just gonna briefly cover a couple of points of interest, I hope, about a couple of things that we are things that we're engaged in, projects that we're engaged in right now, and feel free to open up a discussion about that afterwards. So just a little bit about the collection. We kind of discovered about 5,000 analog audiovisual assets around 2014, 2015, and the project was built around that. And I'm going to talk more about the history of that at the upcoming CAW panel, if you want to hear that, around 11. But essentially, I was brought on board last year to kind of help develop a plan moving forward with the collection. And it's a lot of vernacular footage, news footage, local regional footage, and recordings of meetings and government and public documents, things like that. So that's the content of the collection. So I'm just going to talk really quickly about our current goal and then some of our public access programs that we're playing around with some, I think, interesting structures that maybe will be helpful. The first thing that we did that's maybe a little different is because we were kind of starting the archive from scratch-ish, is that we really took almost a year just to plan and decide what my job would be, because we had to be super honest with ourselves about the reality of the assets that we had and the staffing and funding that we had. I'm part-time on this project, about 26 hours a week. So we just had to make super hard decisions, always reaching for more and trying to get more support, but being really realistic about what we needed to tackle first. So we decided that the main goal would be to prioritize our analog collection for preservation in support of a preservation plan, which we would then start on. So we think that'll take about 3 years. So if someone emailed, that alters our access a little bit from what a normal archive would be. So if you email me about the collection, I will definitely answer you back, but we don't have any public catalog or anything like that right now. So that's a tough decision to make, but we made it because we wanted to be really proactive rather than reactive about what we were preserving first, because we know that there's an event horizon, we're going to, it's possible that we might not be able to preserve everything. We're not supposed to find out, but it's possible. So yeah, that's what we're working on now, inventorying and prioritization. And then also if you want to know about how we're inventorying and prioritizing the collection, I'm going to talk about that at the AV Fair on Saturday, so you can chat with me there. So because that sort of alters and limits our public access, we didn't want to totally limit public access. And so the way that we kind of mitigate that is that we're rolling out really curated public access projects. And I'm really excited about a couple of these. We really want the material to be out in the streets and out in the public, reused and remixed, and we have a lot of support from the institution to do that. And we also wanted to maintain energy and excitement in the collection. You know, it's hard to do that when you're just heads down in a cataloging phase. We wanted to remember what we're really there for and what the collection is really there for, which is to be used. So I have a couple of examples briefly about these curated public access projects, but for example, we've been doing some really unusual things. We had some early computer animation. We showed that at a local rock venue at an experimental film festival. So that is a really unusual thing that we did. And we've also been doing sort of the typical thing allowing access to researchers and filmmakers to the collection. But the project that I'm really excited about right now is that we have asked, we have some funding to do preservation and public access, and we're really trying to get this mentality that if there's public access of the footage, that part of the budget should be preservation. So just like you have someone running the lights in the venue and you have a budget for water, there's a little budget in there for preservation too. It's understanding the true cost of what it takes to put on a public program. And right now, the project that we're about to engage with is we have asked a local music ensemble to create a piece of music for some silent footage in the collection. So as we're prioritizing the chunks of the collection that are most endangered and most unique, we've defined a set of footage that is endangered and unique, and then they're going to come in and choose what is preserved. So we have funding that pays them to compose the music, and it's just a little bit, but it's a step in the right direction. It pays them to compose music, and it pays for the preservation of the footage also, and it also invites the public in, and the public gets some say in what is preserved. But it's not just random, do you have footage of oak trees in 1979? We've already sort of done some of the curating, but we're also inviting the public and artists in to assist that so that we can kind of keep it out in the world and keep it with the people, but also keep our heads down and really work towards prioritizing everything. So, yeah, that's all I've got.
Janelle. Oh, and I forgot to tell presenters that when you have 1 minute left for your introduction, I'll hold up this, so you have an idea.
Aloha, everybody. My name is Janelle Carante, and I am the head archivist at Ulu'ulu Moving Image Archive of Hawaii. I was kind of chuckling to myself this morning, realizing that this session is called No Islands in this stream, but at least one island. Our archive is on the island of Oahu, and if any of you have ever visited, excuse me, Oahu, University of Hawaii at West Oahu is about 30 miles west of Waikiki in a city called Kapolei. So it's considered, or it's trying to be the second city of the island of Oahu, and the university was one of the first major developments in that area to help grow that side of the island, the west side of the island. So our full name is Ulu'ulu, the Henry Ku'ualoha Juni Moving Image Archive of Hawaii. And it's kind of a mouthful, so we usually just call ourselves Ulu'ulu or Ulu'ulu Archives. Ulu'ulu is a Hawaiian word that means collections, assembly, or gathering. And we thought that was very appropriate when we first started in 2009. We're about to celebrate our 10-year anniversary next year. And really, the way that the archive started was really because of the friendship of two very influential men in the history of Hawaii, Henry Ku'ualoha Jr. and Senator Daniel K. Inouye. Senator Inouye was Hawaii's representative in the legislature, first in Congress and then in the US Senate, basically since statehood, since 1959. Senator Inouye represented Hawaii until his death in 2012. And his close friend and aide, Henry, worked with him, for all of that time until Henry passed away in 2005. And when Henry passed away, Dan went to Henry's family and said, how should we honor your father, your husband, and his family, one of Henry's daughters is a filmmaker, said, well, we want to start the first moving image archive in Hawaii, named in honor of our family member and our father, Henry. And so that was the beginnings of Ulu Ulu. There has always been efforts in the state of Hawaii to preserve and collect moving images, but until Ulu Ulu came into existence, there was no one central place to do that work. And so we started, like I said, in 2009 with a pilot project, working with libraries and museums, television stations across the state to basically pull together aspects of those organizations' collections, bring them all into one project, and use our initial federal grant money to see if this is actually a viable thing, if we could do preservation work of film and video materials in Hawaii, and start an archive. And so with our pilot project, initially we digitized from across 13 different institutions, close to 500 hours of footage, put together a digital collection online through our website, uluulu.hawaii.edu. And because of that effort, we were able to convince our state legislature that it was actually a worthwhile project, and we got annual funding. So it was actually a very good, it's been a pretty great history from 2009 until today. So right now, so starting with those first, after the pilot project, now we have about 45,000 reels in our collection. We have 5 permanent full-time staff, plus part-time student workers who work with us, 62 permanent collections, and since we've started, we've digitized 3,500 reels, which is about 1,800 hours. And the types of material that we collect now come from local television stations. We work with PBS Hawaii to preserve and digitize their collections. Independent filmmakers, museums, individuals have donated their families' home movies. In Hawaii, that's really, really important because actually pre-statehood, there's not that much footage that still exists. If you've been there, it's really hot, it's very humid, not very good for the collection materials, so it is very rare when we are able to acquire materials prior to 1959. And I'll just finish by noting again our website, uluulu.hawaii.edu. That is our main public access portal to our collections. What makes it kind of unique, at least within the University of Hawaii system, is that it's not limited to UH users. Anybody can go to our website, search our catalog, and view streaming clips of our footage. And we also invite researchers from around the world to do their work with our materials. There is contact information through our website, and it's an email that gets sent to staff, and we try to answer within 24 hours. So, so even though we're far away, even though we are on an island, we try to reach out and make sure that we're accessible to anybody who's interested in our collections. Thank you.
Ben Truey from Southern Oregon Historical Society.
Yeah, listening to these people with staffs and budgets makes me really feel like a country mouse up in the big city for a day. I've actually been up here since Tuesday. The last 3 days it's been at the Oregon Historical Society, up to my eyeballs in 1850s manuscripts. Because as a historical society, film is a very small part of what we do. And actually lately we don't do all that much. The Historical Society is really old. It dates back to the 1870s. It used to be very wealthy. It used to have a lot of staff, lots of money, a budget of $1 million a year. Then in 1995, the voters of Oregon, in their wisdom, decided that our levy should be folded into the general fund. So even though our levy is still collected, it's being spent on frills like police and fire and roads, and we don't get any of it. But back when we had money, they took, we were staffed by museum professionals who took in a vast collection of 16mm film, mostly 16mm. The news collections of the 2 local radio stations, their news footage, and in their wisdom, they put them very neatly in boxes and put them on the shelf in 1987 and forgot about them. My work is done. And that's what I found recently. And there were no plans to do anything with it. And so I begged and whined a lot and finally got the equipment. The equipment consists of a 50-year-old R&CA TP66 telecine. And you can see that one of my handicaps is our take-up reels are elliptical instead of round. Doesn't do really great transfers. I like to call them review transfers. You can see shadows moving across the screen and make out what's going on. And as unfortunately, those reels in the little gray boxes, they're very small reels that average about 2.5 minutes. So even though I've transferred almost 1,500 reels, it does not that much time, and I'm about 5% done. One of my other handicaps is I've had a great deal of difficulty exciting any local interest. I've had TV spots done on the project, newspaper stories, and people will say, that's great what you're doing, but no one offers to help. And I can't, even though the film that I'm transferring at the moment is from the 1960s, it's 50 years old, it's within living memory, I'm not having any luck getting the old timers to come in and tell me what's going on and who are these people on the screen. I don't know what the problem there is, because as our current generation of old timers dies off, these images will become permanent mysteries. They're very, very poorly indexed. Many of them, as you can see in the box in the lower left-hand corner, are not indexed at all, and we're just going to have to guess as to date and what's going on in the film, especially the silent stuff. So that's my joy. We also have local and national newsreels, and of course the huge collection of Snyder telescriptions, which are wonderful. If you aren't familiar with Snyders, they're like soundies. They're produced fillers that they used on the local TV station. They're musical numbers, and they have sets and even choreography for some of them, and just wonderful. The Four Tops, Cab Calloway, and a lot of country stars I'm not all that interested in. Wonderful stuff. And I'm just about talked out. Nothing but frustration. No staff. It's just me. And but every reel I put on it's an Easter egg. It's a Christmas present, because I have no idea what I'm going to see. All too often, it's a Chamber of Commerce or a City Council meeting, which is absolutely identical to the last reel. To the last meeting I transferred, just people sitting around doing nothing silently. But often there are reels of a B-roll, which are actually descriptive and actually show you how people lived 50 years ago. I think I'm done.
Renee Ramos from the Florida Moving Image Archives.
Good morning. So if I say our whole name, which I will, it will, like Afshin's hand up will go up because it'll take me about 7 minutes. But it's the Lynn and Lewis Wolfson II Florida Moving Image Archives. We're down in Miami. We've been in existence since 1983, so we're celebrating our 35th anniversary. And we came about upon the retirement of longtime television news anchor Ralph Rennick. He was kind of a legend in local news, and he was really one of the founders of digital news, electronic news gathering. Digital. We got his entire collection because he wanted it to live on when he retired in 1983. So the preponderance of the stuff that we have is essentially local television news from the South Florida area. We've got about 23 million feet of news film and other types of film. Oh, sorry. 35,000 hours of videotape, and we've been involved in a digitization project for the last, I'd say, 10 years now. Some of our digitization beasties down at the bottom are the SAMA robot system, and we have an MWA FlashScan Vario and an MWA FlashScan Choice. We've gone through quite a bit of the videotape, and we're able to offer something in the neighborhood of 60,000 clips online through public access. So our history in terms of sponsorship has been kind of long and convoluted. Essentially, we started out kind of as an orphan, then we became, the patrons were the Miami Public Library System, so we were in the basement of the library, along with all kinds of interesting creatures and birds and rats and all kinds of other stuff that would fly in. We've gotten an upgrade, and we've gotten sponsorship from Miami-Dade College, which is the essentially the community college system in South Florida. So we're based now in a nice facility in downtown Miami. It's 9,000 square feet. It really enables us to become part of the whole cultural scene that's really taking off in downtown Miami and the environs. Collections growth. It's been made mostly donations, but also occasional dumpster dives. We got a call one time from a television news station, WPLG, that was shutting operations. And they said, you know, come and take this stuff away or it's going to be hauled away. So we built up quite a bit of the collection. And every once in a while we'll get another call like that. But sometimes we get the call too late. And that's really the sad story of local news with collections. Again, our collections policy is anything related to Florida. So if you're familiar with the Florida man cultural meme, as in Florida man holds up convenience store using alligator, we're the ancestral home of the Florida man. Public access, again, we do online. We have some web finding aids, and we're doing a lot of public outreach too. The college has a television station that we have enlisted to help us to produce some local, television programming. So we take some of the material and we commission programming that uses the archival materials. We have, as part of the Miami Film Festival, which is also sponsored by the college, we have a student filmmaking competition where we actually encourage students to take materials from the archives and make films from them. That's it.
Candace Kane from Southside Home Movie Project.
Hi. The Southside Home Movie Project is based at the University of Chicago, founded in 2005 by Dr. Jacqueline Stewart, who I think you all know very well. Our mission is to collect, preserve, digitize, and exhibit home movies from Chicago's South Side. I don't do hour count because most of our films are like 4 minutes long, but we do have 350 films currently and 25 donor families, and that's growing every day. I just got like 2 new collections last week. So the year range is pretty broad. Our earliest film is from 1930, the latest is 1982.
And our new digital archive site launched in May 2018, providing streaming access for everything that we've digitized. And you can see our website. So you see me holding the camera. That's one of our events. We also do oral histories with our donors. We perform in-house digitization of our 8mm and Super 8 collections, but we outsource to the National Museum of African American History and Culture the 16mm and Super 8 sound, and they give us very nice 2K DPX files from that. And then we have a lengthy inspection process with either me, I'm the only staff too, Ben, it's just me full-time. I have a part-time events person, and right now I have three part-time students who do most of the inspection. I train them and they do the inspection. Our inspection is pretty rigorous because the tokens are sprocket driven, which unfortunately means a lot of our stuff can't get transferred. So I am looking for a new digitization machine on the cheap, if you guys are looking. And then events, because Dr. Stewart is a curator, we do a lot of public outreach and events. We try to do at least one event per month. Sometimes we're doing 4. This month we're having 4. I don't have to be at all of them. Some are what I call passive installations, where a group has asked for home movies and they're going to show them. I provide a compilation reel of things. We're doing a holiday party this month. And that's most of how we get our donations, is through those type of events. And we only collect film right now. A lot of people do ask us about video, but again, the time commitment on that is a lot more, and the storage as well. So right now we're just film. And yeah, it's just film, and if you lived on the south side, we'll take your stuff. So yeah, and I don't think there's anything. And yeah, so it's just me.
Oh, if we could we're going to turn our chairs around so we can face everybody. And we'll open it up to questions. So, anybody who has any questions, now's the time.
I had a question for Janelle. Did you keep those, like when you got materials from a variety of different archives and collections and digitized them, did you then also keep the analog things and they became part of your collection, or were they returned and you just posted digital?
Yes, both. So when we first started with the pilot project, we didn't have a physical location. We were actually working out of 2 separate offices. One was one desk at the University of Hawaii at Manoa as part of their Manoa Innovation Center, and then we were also renting storage space at Hawaii News Now television station. And because we did not have a permanent facility as we were working through our pilot project, the initial intent was that after we worked with all of our partner organizations, they provided us reels to digitize. The initial intent was to return those reels to them. But meanwhile, we were working towards getting a permanent location at the University of Hawaii at West Oahu. And so when that facility opened in 2012, we went back to some of our pilot project partners and invited them to become permanent collections. And so some of those organizations did decide to do that. So it was kind of half and half. Originally we returned the items, but then over time, those partners came back and became permanent collections.
Great,
Thank you all for these insights. It's really, really great. Sort of taking notes on the different infrastructures that are in place, which is really interesting. And I had a question for Renee, because in some ways the Florida project is such a long-standing stalwart. And I'm curious how you would describe your, not just funding, but how currently, how you are able to fund your work. Would you say that you're part of the university, or would you say you're a hybrid organization? Does that make sense?
I think in many ways, hybrid is a good way to put it.
Okay.
So if I can go back to the founding history, the archive was set up essentially by Ralph Rennick, who was the longtime anchor of WTVJ, which was in turn part of the Wometco television and movie theater company. The family, the Wolfson family, is one of the cultural icons of the South Florida area. You can just drive around town and chances are anything you put your finger on as far as the map is going to have their name on it in terms of things that were. So they set up things back in 1983 with a significant endowment, and it's done well. And that does part of our funding. But even so, until the college took us over, I would say it wasn't really so much for us a matter of funding. It was more like organizational wherewithal, infrastructure, and those types of things. When the college took over, we were able to lean on them in terms of many things related to stuff like handling payroll, business affairs, benefits, and actually being able to hire people, and those types of things. And we could lean on an administrative structure, and we didn't have to think about those things. We could actually do our jobs. So that it's been really good. Now, you wouldn't think so sometimes when I start complaining about the bureaucracy and the craziness that we have to, and the hoops we have to jump through to get certain things done, like me actually even being here today. But I would say in the long term it's worth it, and it has been worth it.
Could you be sure to repeat the questions in the microphone, because it's being live streamed and you can't hear the audience.
Okay, I could repeat the question now. It was about funding and sponsorship.
It's a question largely for Candace about kind of when you take material in from donors, is the arrangement that they have to give permission for anything you would do with it in terms of live streaming, online streaming, public presentation, kind of if you could talk a little about that, and if sort of what people's comfort levels is with that.
Because we are a university, I understand that bureaucracy. All of our donors signed a deed of gift, which I had to push through legal counsel. I reached out to several colleagues for examples, and I tried to get in there that the donors could retain the rights, and the university didn't like that. So when they signed the deed of gift, the University of Chicago retains all intellectual property rights, which basically means we can do whatever we want with it. The donor does, however, retain the right to do whatever they want with it, as long as they credit us in some way, even making a new film. If we're in the credits, that's fine. But I am careful, because these are people's families, that, especially for commercial requests, I let them know. It's, depending on the donor, it's not written in that I need their written permission, because some are more comfortable with that. I revised it because that made my life harder to get written permission for every request, and I eventually revised the deed of gift to take that out. But I let them know, just because the documentarians and producers are just like, hey, I need this footage and tomorrow, and it's just like, I can't. Now I have to go to the donor. It just made the whole workflow harder for me. But I do let them know, like, one of our footage was just in the MSNBC Michelle Obama documentary, and of course I let the donors know, like, hey, you're gonna be in this, so watch it. And they were like, yeah, great. So on the most part, people are pretty comfortable with it. I did have one donor revise it to be like, you do need to written permission from me. But yeah, we've had pushback on that, some people don't like it. In general, it's people who are filmmakers themselves who want to retain that intellectual property right in case they do make a film. And in that case, I can't really go back and forth with them because the deed of gift is kind of as is. And I think for us, the buy-in is that we're doing all of this work for free. So in some cases, I'm doing thousands of dollars of first digitization work and then the ongoing preservation work. The donors also have the ability to store their films with us because there is a climate-controlled vault on campus. So again, that would be an ongoing payment. So yeah, so that's kind of the. I forgot to repeat the question. It was about the question was about how our deed of gift works and rights with donors. But yeah, and if they don't give, they don't give. I direct them to pay Chicago Film Archive. They do pay transfers, and there's no deed of gift or anything, so I direct them to that. But you know, I'm always like, we're doing it for free, and people will see it. And most of our donors are very happy about that.
Can I add something on rights?
Yeah.
The bulk of a huge part of our collection came in the early 1980s. There was no concept of monetization of content and those things. What I've noticed anyway, in more recent donations from television news outfits that are wanting to give us stuff, there have been many more stipulations as far as rights. They want to retain more, they want to be able to do more with it. So it has become more complex, and I think that's a function of just the environment that we're in now as to where we were when a lot of the collections came about.
We're going to switch to Phil Donahue format here so we can get the questions online. More questions?
Yeah, just to build on that, are any of you like pushing the limits of fair use, or just saying, these are abandoned pieces, we could stream it, nobody's going to care, maybe quit claims, things like that. I'm just curious about where does the field stand with it's being conservative or liberal with just pushing things online because no one's really going to stop you.
Who wants to go first?
When I came on board in 2015, there had been a decade lapse. So there were a bunch of donors who I could no longer get in contact with. And I ended up putting them online after doing a lot of due diligence. Because for me, sometimes the only way you're gonna find these people is if you put it online. Like, how will you find someone if you're not showing films, especially for home movies, which they don't have titles, they don't have a narrative structure. There's not someone on camera saying, hi, I'm blah, blah, blah. So that was one of the ways that I did fair use kind of things. I'm happy to say now all of our donors are accounted for. I eventually found all of them, except for one, which a collector brought us, but again, that's online and I show it frequently, because otherwise how will you find the people? And actually a good story of that is someone did watch it. She wasn't the filmmaker, but she's like, that's me as a child. And so we ended up doing an oral history with her to talk about the Lake Meadows Art Fair and the Lake Meadows community where she lived.
So when we first started putting content on our website, digital content on our website, we kind of erred on the side of being more cautious, mainly because in working with the donors, who were again mostly filmmakers, and so we're really concerned that their life's work and that their intellectual property was not going to be used incorrectly or stolen even. So we decided that every piece of footage that we put on our website was just going to be a very short clip, low resolution, and with a copyright warning preceding the playback. And so far it's been, we haven't had any issues, and like Candace was saying, for most of our donors, once they've seen the content online and within the context of our website and have seen how their work is reaching a brand new audience. So a lot of these people, shot their documentaries 30, 40 years ago, never thought it would get a second life. now it's on available through our catalog, and they're getting a lot, a new response from a brand new audience of students and researchers. And so it's been, for the most part, been very positive. And so we've maintained that same model, now more so because of bandwidth issues. we can't stream everything full length 24/7, so we are still maintaining just 2 to 3 minute clips on our website.
I can speak to what we do. So since we're kind of such a new project, we're kind of figuring all that out, but a lot of our donations were, there's not paperwork for them, but as we take new donations and we do a Creative Commons, like copyright on the copyright form. And I've just been really surprised at the small amount of convincing so far that our donors have needed. I thought there would be a little more caution, but everyone's been super generous. And we actually stream some things on Vimeo. It's sort of our way of testing what a dams will look like when we get one, which the institution, I think, as a whole is looking at. But that's sort of like, again, that's like an advocacy tool. I don't think a lot of people really use it, but yeah, we take some risks, and we have shown some things that we really have no idea who made them at public screenings. But also, we would never show something if we just also use like our, judgment. So if there was something sensitive, we just wouldn't show it, and we'd take something down immediately. So that's how we're operating.
Yes, take down and apologize. We had so many clips that we've put on, and we're all finite people, finite like life people. So we haven't watched everything that we've put online. We generally know that it's going to be okay. If it's not okay, we take it down.
Sure. I can add a little bit. I'm not worried about copyright infringement and rights. If there's a problem, someone will let us know. We'll get a cease and desist letter, and then we'll cease and desist. And it seems to me, as long as you aren't making big bucks, or the person who writes you're infringing isn't a big person with deep pockets like Disney, I think you'll be okay.
Questions? Great, thanks. So one of the things that we hoped for the outcome of the stream was to get ideas for sharing resources and things that people might need. So I'm actually kind of curious if for some reason someone gave you some money, what would be the thing that you would most want?
Oh, I'm first. Okay, no, I like this. I like having to choose one thing. I would say digitization, because after that, it's kind of the rest is free.
I'd like a time machine to go back and recuperate some of the things that ended up in the landfill. But more realistically, we have some assets that, because of the exotic formats or difficult formats, have been difficult to transfer, and we'd shell out in a minute to take care of those.
I would love cold storage. Yeah, it's pretty tough to maintain an ideal environment with our collection materials, and so that's been something on my wish list for a while.
It's hard to choose. I guess right now I do want a digitization machine. Our work with the Smithsonian is great, but because of their ongoing project, there's sometimes a year between when I can give them new batches of film, which is hard to tell a donor, like you'll have to wait a year for like the sound on your film, or even just the film themselves. So an all-in one, like that does 16, that would do Super 8 or 8. Doing the sound, I don't know that I'll get. It's just, no one's making that for a magnetic track, just except lasers, what is it, the scan station, which, if they gave me 150K, I'd buy it. But yeah, I think a digitization machine,
Since our collection is only about 5% transferred to video, that means it's only 5% catalog. The rest, we have no idea what it even is. So I think at this point, what I could use is an employee. I can't find volunteers who want to do the onerous work of splicing and transferring. And I think it's something you have to pay someone to sit there and do.
So you partially answered this. I was actually wondering if any of you guys do anything to try to engage community participation, whether it be in form of volunteering or just like at least trying to expose your archive and get other people to view it.
Yes. I can tell you what I've done that hasn't worked, but it may be because we're in a community of just 250,000 people, but newspaper articles, TV spots. I've spoken before film groups and the public access TV producers, and they all think it's great what you're doing. You keep doing what you're doing, and that's it. You know, I think the next thing to try to do is get a sponsorship and try a contest and see if I can get someone, you know, people to compete in doing productions with the raw footage that I've transferred. But failing that, I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, we do a lot of events. If you go to our website, you'll see our events calendar, which is insane. But I think we have done piloting of the community cataloging events. You know, some of this stuff doesn't have locations and identifying people, and that's worked well. I found the stuff that works the best is to partner with an existing organization that already has a body of people and a network. We partner with the Arts and Public Life Initiative on campus a lot, and they're just a long-running arts thing. And when we do stuff with them, I get like an influx of new emails and people going, oh my God, I have films, but it works less so sometimes when we try to do one-off events ourselves. We tend to not get as much of a response just because we haven't built up the network as much.
Ulu Ulu is part of the Academy for Creative Media, which is a program at the University of Hawaii, which is actually pretty cool for us because it means that we're in contact with a lot of students and instructors who are media makers and filmmakers. And so part of our work with that program is we teach classes. And actually, Candace inspired me for a special projects class that we're going to be teaching this summer with my colleague Robbie, who is here in the audience. We're going to be teaching a course with the Creative Media Department at UH West Oahu to conduct and record oral histories with filmmakers who are represented in our collection. And so it gives the student filmmakers a chance to practice their production skills, and it gives us a chance to actually sit down and formally interview donors to our collection that we have not captured their histories on tape. And so that would be the basis of a new collection, Ulu Ulu Oral History Collection, which will hopefully help us inform our descriptive cataloging for those materials.
So for years we were participating, or we have been participating, we still do, in the home movie day events. What we found is being downtown and having that event just once a year, it was really starting to dwindle in terms of the attendance that we had. So we decided to partner with the Miami-Dade County Public Library System in a series of programs to do personal archiving days, little afternoons where we would have maybe a couple of people speak on different topics, have a little fair where there may be some scanners set up, but also some people with AV archiving experience like us. And we've done the whole personal archiving thing with 2 tracks. So we've done the more community type one where just anybody can come in, and it's folks who might have some home movies sitting in their closet or some photographs or whatever. And then we did a different one to attract people who are actual media creators and need to start understanding how to preserve their digital assets, their born digital assets going forward. Because I think that's an opportunity to educate people on what they're going to need to do to make sure that their work continues. That's what we've done.
Yeah, obviously, tell that we do a lot of, a fair amount of public access with screenings and that kind of thing, but we do have volunteers, and we have an internship program, and we do community archiving workshops, and we're actually going to be the hub for a lot of community archiving workshops in the southern region, so if anyone wants to talk about that, let me know. So yeah, we found that especially like community archiving workshops have been a huge support. You need a community archiving workshop, and I think we should set one up for you. And maybe you've done one, I don't know. But yeah, that's how we approach that. It's our hope that like as this project moves forward, we would be a center of education. We'd love to do as much educating as possible once we get the collection.
Isn't there a session after this one on community archive?
Yes. Yes, there is. At 11, there is a session on community archiving workshops, and you can learn all about the history of them and how they played a role in actually funding the project that I'm a part of right now. So it can lead to great things, and it's a great thing in and of itself.
I think we have time for another question. Is there anybody? Burning question.
So this is a little more philosophical, but I would like each of you to talk a little bit about what it means to be a community archive in terms of representation, where historically the people with access to home movie cameras tended to be wealthier and whiter, and how you might be trying to be more, resemble more closely the communities where your archives are housed.
Well, for the Southside Home Movie Project, that exact issue was why Dr. Stewart founded it. Demographically, the South Side has changed a lot, but it is majority Black. So our archive probably has one of the largest collections of African American home movies from the late 20th century, which is really important both for the community and me personally, because my family's films are also in the archive, although we're in the shadow archive because I'm from St. Louis, so very, very south Chicago. But that was really important to me to be able to see my family represented on film, and I think it does help me connect with donors because many of them have the same lived experience as my grandparents and my mom and aunts. And yeah, I think that community just needs that. We do a lot of work with youth, and when they see the films and see their neighborhoods represented as not crime-ridden, as not gang-ridden, but people doing block parties, people doing picnics, people really living joyfully on the South Side, it really makes an impact on them because they're just so inundated with negative news stories about the South Side of Chicago. So yeah, I think it's really important, and I'm always constantly trying to give that back to the community and have them use it and feel like it's their own archive. It's not, and yeah, being part of I won't go into it, but being part of the University of Chicago is sometimes hard because of the history in that neighborhood, but for the most part, I try to be as personal as I can and make them feel like it's their archive and I'm not taking something from them, but I'm giving something back as well.
In Hawaii, in particular, a lot of the images that people tend to see of the islands is really, glamorized. The Western view of what Hawaii as a tourist destination mainly looks like. And so I think one of the strengths of Ulu Ulu is that we have been able to focus our efforts on a body of material that was shot during what's called the Hawaii Renaissance. So the 1970s, just like elsewhere around the world, Native Hawaiians picked up the camera for the first time and started documenting their own lives. And a lot of this footage hasn't been seen outside of those grassroots organizations or outside of the communities for which they were originally shot for. And so our collection really does focus on local community, on how Hawaiians documented themselves, and to offer a counter visual narrative to what most Western images have, how most Western images have portrayed Hawaii in the past.
So we've got about 4,000 reels of home movies, and I would say I have to agree that for the most part, it does reflect that white middle class type of preponderance of material. Interestingly, some of the only record that we have of a thriving African American middle class community called Overtown in the northwest section of Miami-Dade County is in the form of home movies. And we've been able to supply that material to filmmakers who want to document that period, and there's really nothing else. The news didn't cover the area, but the home movies did, so that's been one of the pleasant surprises in working through the collection and making it available to the public.
Yeah, I'm really glad this came up. Because this is a really big issue for us, because our collection has great things in it, but it is not representational enough of our community at all, and it is like it's a very high priority for us we want to correct that if we want to call ourselves a regional archive. And so right now we're in the prioritization and cataloging stage, but we have two ways that we're dealing with increasing the diversity in the collection, and one is our prioritization system prioritizes films that portray marginalized experiences. So that's part of our prioritization methodology. And then we're not very actively collecting right now, but our hope is to collect in the future, once we start to do that, the works of contemporary filmmakers in the region. And so a diversity of voices there will be a very high priority once we start to collect actively. So yeah, that's how we're doing with it right now.
It's certainly a concern. Film, not so much. Our society hasn't collected any films since the 1980s. But in my documentary work, that is the work I do in the paper archives, a lot is trying to better document the histories of the underclass, the people who don't leave much of a paper trail. And unfortunately, those people leave even less of a celluloid trail. And it's going to be an ongoing problem.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for wonderful questions. Thank our panelists for coming out and sharing stories and ideas. Just one announcement that I know for a lot of small and regional archives, we end up with television collections, and there is going to be a group discussion from 10 to 11 in the pavilion with Caroline Frick and Laura Treat. And it's about the National Film Preservation Board's local TV preservation summit that is going to be happening. So you can be a part of that discussion from 10 to 11 in the pavilion if you so choose. Thanks again. Be sure to check out the rest of our streams, our stream sessions throughout the day.